We follow the scriptures that we follow.
Yeah.
Is the Jewish court at some point ruled that these are canonical. These are the books of the Old Testament, and these books are outside.
When did that Jewish court exist?
First court was Moses and the 70 elders, and then that concluded. The final court we had was Rav Ashi and Ravina, and we have a chain of narration.
When is that last court? When is that last court?
So the last court will have been around 400 CE.
This is my point. The Judaism that you follow is not a first century Judaism.
It doesn't really matter which is further from Judaism. Neither are Jewish. So atheism isn't a Jewish principle. Not what I would understand Judaism to be.
Yeah.
And the Trinity isn't.
On what grounds do you say that the Trinity is not Jewish?
Because there is no concept of the Trinity before Christianity in any Jewish text.
How are you, bro? You okay?
Yeah, I'm alright.
Still a Muslim?
Yeah, alhamdulillah.
I don't want to get into it, guys. I don't want to get into it. He's not like you know. Yeah, let's not feed the ego.
Feed the what?
Ready, Joseph?
Yeah, you're not very polite, are you, Bob?
You're coming
Always
across
insulting
as a bit
people.
rude, I think.
What's that?
You're coming across as a bit
He
rude.
called me an idiot.
Oh, did you? Oh, Sila.
I mean, we'll see who the idiot is.
Right.
Joseph, can you please stand like on Bob's right hand side? I will frame it. Don't worry. I will frame it. I will frame it. I will frame it. Don't worry.
On Bob.
Yeah.
Yeah, on the right hand side. Yeah, I'll frame it.
Have a good day, Luca.
You too.
Right.
Who are you talking to?
But just are we both in shot?
Yeah, but you're blocking his shot.
You're blocking his shot, bro. Why be
well,
rude?
move your camera then.
No, I've
Why are you being rude?
Why are you being a dick? Seriously, we just had a really civil conversation. Why are you making me move my camera?
Pass his camera.
Like, you've come over, we were going to have a conversation. I was really polite and spoke to you for like 15, 20 minutes when I was meant to be filming to him, and you've just
Alright, have
moved my
your
camera.
conversation. I'm not getting in your way.
I mean, you've literally moved my... Like, can I just grab
No,
this?
don't worry. I'll frame that.
Don't want disturbed.
Oh, okay. All right, start where you were. Let me frame.
Wow.
All right, that's what Islam does to your
It does to your manners.
manners.
That was surreal. Okay.
You're the last one to talk about manners.
Go. I will frame it. Don't worry.
We like you, Joseph. He'll frame it properly. Like he'll make you look good in the light.
Cool.
Right, are we all good?
Perfect.
Great.
Okay.
So the question that we've agreed to come together at the cafe is to talk about.
Sorry, can I just do one thing? Sorry.
Yes.
Sorry, I just want to make sure I've got
It's
this.
recording.
No, it's more this one because if I'm not on that particular setting on the top, my audio breaks.
Right.
Okay,
right,
sorry.
So it's the question of the position of Messianic Jews in Israel.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a controversial issue in Israel, and I'd like you to explain why.
So it's a controversial issue in Israel because the whole purpose of having a Jewish state is to preserve the Jewish people, and one of the fundamental aspects of who the Jewish people are is our faith and our religion.
Yeah.
And so if someone apostates from the faith, which we would believe a Christian is doing, the views which they would then be potentially introducing to other Jews, but if they're evangelizing, would from a definitional position be quite problematic for the state. So that's where the controversy comes from, because Israel is a place of refuge for all Jews.
Yep.
What happens if a Jew comes there with ideas that undermine the very Jewish character of the state? So I think that frames the... So
at the moment, I mean, we are repeating a little bit of something that we discussed at the cafe for the sake of the camera. So it's not like we haven't already talked about some of these points. But currently, what is the position on Israel and Messianic Jews? Do they have the right of Aliyah, the right of return?
So I'm not qualified to speak this because I've not studied the laws closely, so I can give my personal opinion.
Yeah.
I can give examples I'm aware of, but this is not a statement of what the law of Israel is.
Sure.
And I can give you a summary of what the Jewish halakhic, or the legal perspective from a Jewish in terms of the religion, and give you that perspective as well. From a secular, so first thing that was established is Israel is a secular state. It's not a theocratic state.
Yeah.
There is minimal areas of the law which correlate with the religious. There are a few. So the day of rest in Israel is a Saturday and not a Sunday.
Yeah.
The British inherited the Ottoman laws, and the the Israelis inherited the British laws of marriage,
Yep.
which means that you can only marry under the state within your religion.
Yep.
So Christians will marry Christians, Muslims will marry Muslims, Jews will marry Jews, Jews will marry Jews. If you get married to someone outside of your faith, it's still recognized by the state,
Yep.
but it usually it takes place outside of Israel, so somewhere like Cyprus.
So you can't legally get married.
Yeah, and so it's a Christian and Jewish person cannot marry
Inside of Israel.
inside Israel, but if they were to marry outside of Israel,
Yeah.
it would be recognized by the state as a legitimate marriage,
Right.
and they'd have all the same rights as any other couple.
Okay, so what I'm hearing from you is you can't say whether Israel allows the right of return for Messianic Jews.
So I know there are instances where Messianic Jews have definitely been given the right to return.
They have?
Yes.
But is that on an individual case with exceptions, or is that the standard position of Israel for Messianic
I'm not
Jews?
sure that. So Israel, how the legal system works, is there are basic laws
Yeah.
which were set right at the beginning of when the state was founded, and these kind of set the precedent, but they're not. They were in their very definition laws that were rushed through in haste because the state was just coming into existence. So what we now have is we have a judicial system
Yep.
which tends to be very much left and secular,
Yeah.
and they will set the precedent. They will look at what's happened in the past, and if there isn't something that's happened in the past, they will try to determine what should happen today.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to the right to return, it's usually going to be secular judges ruling on what they interpret the law should be.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the reforms the current government is looking at is, okay, let's do something more serious.
Yeah.
So whatever anyone thinks of the current government, the judiciary is a big part of the debate, the protest you're seeing in Israel at the moment.
So I want to propose it to you that Messianic Jews pose no threat to the people of Israel and no threat to the Jewish state. And I wonder how do you respond to that statement?
Very, very, very easily. So Jewish law works very simply.
Yeah.
If you have a Jewish mother,
Yeah.
or you convert into the faith, you're Jewish.
Yeah.
It's that simple. Now, Christianity would put up no such barrier. So ignoring the theological implications on the Jewish
Yeah.
state, but just looking at who is a Jew, if a Christian of a Jewish mother wants to marry a Christian of a Muslim, or a non-Jewish mother,
Yeah.
no Christian would put a barrier between that.
Yeah. That's right.
And so fundamentally, you've already undermining the very Jewish character of the state, because it's no longer a state for Jews, it's a state for Christians.
So let me the thing. So what I guess the logic of your position then is that you would have to say that you don't want Messianic Jews to have the right to return.
So, no, because
You don't want them to have the right to return.
I don't want Messianic Jews to be Messianic Jew. I wouldn't call them Messianic Christians of Jewish descent, but I don't want them to practice the religion they're practicing
Inside
but they're
Israel.
still anywhere. But
Right.
they're still my brothers. They're
Yeah.
still my sisters, and I want them to return to their ancestral faith.
So would your position, Joseph, be that a Messianic Jew could return to Israel and continue to practice Christianity?
My belief would be yes, that I would be in support of that.
Great.
And I would say Israel is the greatest. If you have a Jew
Yeah.
who has abandoned the Jewish tradition, and let's say they've repackaged Christianity, which they have, and they're calling it Messianic Judaism, which they are,
Yeah.
the greatest remedy from a Jewish perspective to that would be for that person to be surrounded by authentic Torah observant Jews who are qualified to answer the questions that may have taken them away from their ancestral faith. So I would say the greatest place on this earth that a Messianic Christian Jew could be
is in Israel.
Yeah.
So we both agree, we're both in favour of allowing Messianic Jews to return to Israel.
Yes.
Great. Now, I want to point out the reason why I don't think that they're a threat to Jewish identity. And pointing out with a couple of points. Firstly, I know in Israel not everyone is a practicing Jew. I know in Israel that there are Jews that are marrying non-Jews.
Yes.
I know that Messianic Jews, specifically Messianic Jews, cling to the Jewishness of the faith. Like if you want to meet a group of Christians, that cling to the Jewishness of the Christian faith, because we both know that Christianity is a Jewish sect, the most successful Jewish sect there's ever been, right? Therefore, not only is it historically Jewish, like from before the time the Romans expelled the Jews, there were Jews that were believing in Yeshua as the Messiah, but these particular Messianic Jews double down on all the Jewishness of Christianity in a way that other Messianic Jews don't. Like Messianic Jews, like the brother who converted to Catholicism that comes to the pot. Yeah, he doesn't double down on the Jewishness of his faith, but these Messianic Jews, they do. So they're not a threat to Jewish culture or Jewish identity, because for them it's super important to double down on the Jewishness of the
I would say what you describe as Jewishness.
Yeah.
Is exactly, the emphasis is on the ness. It's not Jewish. It's,
on what grounds do you say it's
not
not
grounds?
Jewish?
So give me an example of something they do that you believe is Jewish.
They'll practice the Passover.
Okay, perfect. How do they practice? What's the symbolism of the matzot?
I'm not an expert.
So as an example,
the matzot, is that the bread? You'll have to use the English words.
No, the English word is matzot.
Okay, you'll have to break that down for me a bit.
On the Passover, we have a meal called the Seder.
Yeah.
And we're commanded to eat flatbread.
Yes.
Which are called matzot. And in Europe, the matzot are pierced, so they remain flat, and they're like a cracker.
Yeah.
If you go to the Middle East, they're more like a flat bread, and they're not pierced.
Yeah.
Now the Christians came along and said, the bread is pierced because Jesus was pierced. It's nothing to do with.
No, hold on one second. They will use what they're doing is completely Jewish. Let me explain why. It's completely Jewish because firstly, they are Jewish ethnically. Secondly, Christianity is a Jewish religion of origin. And thirdly, Jews themselves have put extra layers of meaning over the symbols of their own religion as time has gone on, and that's totally fine. It's totally acceptable within Judaism. So what is wrong with an ethnically Jewish religious movement putting a layer of interpretation over a Jewish custom?
Because that's exactly, it's then no longer. It's in the same way that
can
I give you an example which you'll be able to understand? You probably don't follow it, but is it transubstantiation? What's it called when they drink
the Catholic Church believes in the concept of transubstantiation. Yeah. I don't believe in transubstantiation. I guess you wouldn't. I believe in consubstantiation.
If someone were to come along and say we're doing transubstantiation, and then they say, but this is now no longer the blood of Jesus, it's now symbolizes the blood of pigs that we're not allowed to drink. So just some random, completely unconnected, disconnected, nothing to do with the religion. It's no longer Christian. You completely fundamentally changed the meaning of what the thing is.
But the thing is, what you're trying to suggest that you are in the position to define what is Jewish in religiosity. One second. Because you're saying that the matzot, which, in the European Jewish community is pierced, right? That is, that the Christians have put in an interpretation that wasn't original to the Jewish community.
The reason we do this is because Jesus was pierced. That's a lie. That's a categorical, explicit lie. Nowhere in any tradition
wait,
up until the 60s in America
hold on one second.
We would both agree then that is no longer Jewish.
No, I disagree. That is Jewish. That is Jewish.
No, it's now Christian. If you're saying with eating this matzot, so the whole symbolism of matzot is.
Siraj said that's in stickler format.
The whole purpose of matzot is that it symbolizes that our bread didn't have time to rise when we left Egypt. Nothing to do with Jesus. The whole purpose of eating it is for that reason. And so, if you're then saying there's a different symbolism behind that, it's no longer Jewish. It's no longer the Jewish reason for doing that.
Right. So hold on one second. So the fact is, right? Would you agree with me that the symbolisms behind the Passover have increased in their nuances and their understanding as time has gone forward? So in other words, that Jews have deepened the symbolism of the Seder meal as time has gone forward and added to it.
I would say only to amplify and glorify the original meaning.
That's fine. But would you agree that that's authentically Jewish?
So how Jewish law works is you can. This is in the Torah. You can. So the rabbis create many decrees, after in the Talmudic period, in the Messianic period, and prior to that, from Moses all the way to Rav Ashi and Ravina, they introduced laws to protect the original law.
Yeah.
But they can't introduce a law to change the law. So you can't come along and say that pig is kosher or change the fundamental meaning of why we do something. All you can do is protect the original law, glorify the original
So
law.
let me reply to that. So my point to, so back to symbolism. So my point to you is, right, Jewish symbolism has evolved over time according to Jewish customs built on customs. There's no problem with that, and I understand what you're saying. It's about defending the original meaning of the law. But the original meaning of the Passover is to point to the Messiah. It is to point to, that is how first century Jews understood the Passover, who founded Christianity.
The meaning of the Passover, I mean, we have a whole thing called the Haggadah, we read through it all.
Yeah.
And it's
When's the Haggadah dated to?
The Haggadah it's mentioned in the Gemara, so it's at least 2000. I couldn't tell you exactly, I couldn't tell you. I don't like speaking on what I don't know.
Fair enough.
It goes,
Is it AD or BC?
It will be AD, was when it will have been written down.
Is it first century AD?
Yes, it,
Right.
it will have been. So it was the rabbi's named in the Haggadah.
Right.
So I can actually tell you the exact date.
Yeah, please. So while you're finding that, my point to you is, I have in my bag entire New Testament literature, all of it written by Jews, and they interpret the Passover as a symbol of Christ the Messiah. Christ the Messiah, that's just saying Messiah twice. Of Yeshua the Messiah. My point to you is, therefore, that if later on Jews add that symbolism, add that Jewish interpretation of the Passover onto the Jewish custom of the Seder meal, it is Jewish.
So the whole purpose of the Haggadah is to give us the format of discussing.
When is the Haggadah dated?
It says it was written. This is Wikipedia. So it's like
fair enough.
But
with some
170
caveats.
But basically,
170 AD.
The
170 AD.
rabbis who are mentioned in it are maybe a couple of generations before that. So Rabbi Akiva and people.
So
like
what we're talking at 80?
So we're talking somewhere between 50 and 150.
Right, but the New Testament was a second temple Jewish document.
Just let me finish.
Yeah.
The purpose of the Haggadah, the purpose of what they're recording, the purpose of the Haggadah, why we celebrate it, is to commemorate, and this is why we're told is the leaving of Egypt. The focus is not on the Messiah.
Yes.
The focus is on the redemption of the Jewish people from bondage in Egypt.
Yeah.
That's the purpose of it. It's nothing to do with the Messiah. It's to do with, ultimately, we were redeemed. It's a recognition. It's giving praise and thanks to the Creator for redeeming the Jewish people from servitude.
Right, now I agree with everything you've just said.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not disputing anything. I'm not trying to contradict you in any way. All I'm saying is that a first century Jewish movement at the Second Temple added to that understanding and said that pointed to Yeshua as the Messiah. And the Jews of today are taking that narrative and applying it to how they interpret the Seder meal. Now, remember, we're talking about examples. My point to you is that you're trying to argue that the way that they're doing this is undermining Jewish identity. And what I'm trying to show to you, Joseph, is that what they're doing is they're taking something that predates your Haggadah. What did you pronounce it?
Haggadah, yeah.
Haggadah. That predates your Haggadah, is Jewish, and is originated out of the Jewish people, and they're just applying that logic to today. So it's a Jewish thing.
Okay, sorry.
It's not a non-Jewish thing.
So Jews have kept Pesach, the Passover, before the Talmudic period, the Messianic period, and after. And throughout that period, no Jews, up until around 60 years ago, maybe even less, said that the reason that the matzah is pierced is because it represents Jesus being pierced on the cross.
Fine.
No Jew throughout history said that. So some Jews came along who abandoned their faith, or maybe didn't abandon it. In most instances, they never had the faith.
I think they quote rabbis, don't they?
No.
Are you sure?
100%.
Fair enough. I'm going to take your word for it, because I don't know what logic they give. And
if they do, they're misquoting.
I'm even going to go further, Joseph. I'm going to concede the point entirely and say you're absolutely right. But what I'm saying is, right, that I'm going to agree with you and say that if they're saying that this is why all Jews do this, then I'm agreeing with you and saying that that's wrong. But what I'm saying, though, is that as Jews, if they say that this is why they do it, you can't say that that's not Jewish. And the reason why you can't say that it's not Jewish is because a first century Jewish movement interpreted, which predates your Jewish movement, because your Jewish movement is after the 1st century. The text that you're quoting is 2nd century.
So you're saying in
the
the New
Talmud
Testament
is
it says what it
the
says.
New Testament teaches that the Passover is a pointing towards.
Can you? I like to learn, and I've never read. Can you show me
Yeah.
where in the New Testament? Because you know you
Yeah.
read scripture.
Yeah,
I do.
yeah, yeah, I'll
I mean,
show
I
you.
barely know your scriptures.
I will show you. I will show you. I will show you from
I'm-
Jesus' own lips. Comes straight out of Jesus' own lips. This is where it comes from, right?
And while you're looking that up,
Yeah.
so Jesus existed on the same sort of period as the rabbis I'm discussing.
Right. Yeah.
So they're basically the same period Jews.
Yeah.
These are not, and so you have the Jews who all Jews have followed from this period.
Yeah.
For the last 2,000 years,
Yeah.
and you have the Jew who all the Christians followed for the last 2,000 years.
Yeah.
Which is more likely to be representative of authentic Judaism? Probably the one that all the Jews followed, not the one that all the non-Jews followed.
Right.
Like,
Well.
if you'd have said, and I will go even
Go
further,
on.
I would say that if you were to read Jesus as he's spreading his message to Jews,
Yeah.
what he is spreading is much closer to what Jews do today than what Christians. If you look at the first 100 years of Christianity,
Right.
Jesus is preaching to Jews, his audience is Jews. If you fast forward 200 years later, those that are following Jesus' teaching are no longer Jewish. There's very, very few Jews left following. The overwhelming majority of Jews remain Jewish,
Yeah.
whereas Christianity was adopted by non-Jews and ultimately the Romans, and then it spread around the world.
Yeah.
And so, I'll come to your quote, but to very, very quickly summarize what I'm saying is you have the majority of Jews doing one thing in the period we're talking, and we have Jesus maybe doing what you're about to say, maybe not doing what the church later adopts. I'm sure there is, we would call it machloket.
Brave man.
No,
Talking about Christian history. Yeah.
Again, I don't. What I would say is, I'm sure there is machloket,
Yeah.
where different traditions, points of conflict, disagreement as to the extent
Yeah.
to which Jesus and his disciples follow Jewish law. Would you say that's a fair statement? There are some that will say that they wouldn't have kept any laws. There are some Christians that would say they kept Jewish law. Would you say that's...
So the thing is, the reality is that the church at the Council of Jerusalem came to an understanding of how to incorporate Gentiles into Israel. And the way that they came to that conclusion was that Jews shouldn't stop being Jewish and Gentiles shouldn't become Jews. That was the compromise that the Council of Jerusalem came to. So you see, for instance, Paul, who was accused of being a breaker of the law, he had Timothy circumcised. He went to the temple and performed temple sacrifices. So, he observed the law himself. But when he was teaching the Gentiles, he was saying to the Gentiles that you don't have to observe the Torah, right? Now, the thing is that I'm going to show you that Jesus taught that the Passover was about him. So he's taking the Last Supper, which is the Passover meal.
What could just does it say that it's the Passover meal, or does it call it the Last Supper? And you are interpreting that as the Passover meal because of the time of year.
It absolutely will definitely identify it. I mean,
do you speak Koine Greek? Would you be able to go to the Greek word and translate that? Just because I would like to see that if it explicitly says it's the Passover Seder.
Yeah, because it gives the yes. Here we go. When Jesus had finished all these words, he said to his disciples, after 2 days, the Passover is coming, and the Son of Man is to be handed over for crucifixion.
So is this in 2 days the Passover meal is coming?
Yeah. So this is 2 days before the Passover meal, right?
Can you just give it? Because I just so I
So that's in Matthew 26. I can show you in every gospel, bro. But the synoptic gospels are clear that it is a Passover meal.
I just want to see if there's if that's ever translated in.
Right, listen, in Luke 22 it says, now the feast of unleavened bread, which is called the Passover, is approaching, the chief priest and the scribes. So again, it's given the context that this is the time of the Passover.
This is coming in 2 days, and then the meal is had 2 days later. Is that right? Or is this a meal that is? Are they saying that Passover meal, the Last Supper, is 2 days before that? I'm just trying to follow.
It's saying that it's giving the context of the meal, and then it goes to talk about them celebrating. So then came the first day of unleavened bread, on which the Passover lamb had to be sacrificed. And Jesus sent Peter and John, saying, "Go and prepare the Passover for us." Is that clear enough?
So okay, so let me just read.
Yeah.
The first day.
So clear as day, it's saying it's the Passover.
Yeah, I would say that
Clear as day?
Yeah.
Right, and then he goes on to say...
And just for qualification...
That's in Luke, that's in Luke 22,
just
yeah.
because you're familiar with the scripture,
Yeah.
I'm not, as I opened. Is that meal happening on the night, or the night? At which point? The reason I'm asking this is this happening on the? Let's say it's the Jewish day starts at nightfall and ends at nightfall, rather than midnight till midnight.
Yeah.
So is this meal happening in the evening, or is it happening in the daytime, or is it happening after the daytime in the evening of the second night?
Right.
When is this
So the
happening?
context is that the meal is happening at night.
Yeah, so I'm just trying, is it happening on the first night or the second night?
So all I'm going to answer is this. I'm going to affirm what the scriptures affirm. The scriptures affirm that it is the Passover.
So the 7 days of which
Yeah,
it's Passover. So
exactly.
I'm trying to work out which of the meals this is.
Well,
it the
I would
first
imagine,
night, or is it the second
that
night?
it's the first one, but I would imagine. Yep.
Let's work on the assumption.
I'm
and
pretty
we both
sure.
go and check.
I'm pretty sure it is. But my point to you is, the reason why I hesitate to sort of pin myself to a specific night is because I simply don't know enough about the Jewishness of this event to speak into that.
Yeah.
What I do know is that the scriptures say that it is the Passover meal. How many Passover meals do you
So
have?
you eat throughout the week, but the
Right,
big
okay.
one which we're talking about at the moment, which is when you'll have the Seder, is the first
Yes.
night, and it's had
Right.
in Jerusalem.
So it says,
ideally.
the first day of unleavened bread on which the Passover lamb had to be sacrificed, and Jesus sent Peter and John, saying, "Go and prepare the Passover for us so that we may eat." They said to him, "Where do you..." So it is the Passover.
So just so I'm on, so in this context, you've got a load of Jews.
Yep.
They're in Jerusalem.
Yep.
And they are about to do what every other Jew in Jerusalem is doing at that time, and that's preparing for the Pesach meal.
Yes.
So far, that from a religious perspective, that's fine.
Great. So now I'm going to show you the Jewishness of Jesus's teachings shows that the Messianic Jews are not doing something that isn't Jewish. They're doing something that is rooted in Jewishness because Jesus was a Jew. Do you accept Jesus was a Jew?
If he existed, yes, he would have been a Jew, and I think it's
Right.
highly likely he did exist because of the details of the story.
Yes.
It makes to have him coming from Nazareth and things like that.
Yeah.
It makes sense that he did exist. at
Right.
some point.
So it says here, right?
Thank you.
It says here, when the hour had come, he reclined at table and the apostles with him, and he said to them, "I have earnestly desired to eat this Passover with you before I suffer." So again, we've identified that we're talking about the Passover meal. And then he goes on to say, speaking of the bread, he says, "This is my body, which is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me." And then speaking of the wine, he says, "This cup, which is poured out for you, is the new covenant in my blood."
So can I?
So one second. So what I'm pointing out to you is that when Messianic Jews take the Seder meal and they use it to it being an interpretation about Yeshua being the Messiah, they're following a Jewish interpretation of the Passover meal. So that means it is authentically Jewish.
No, so that's not, unfortunately, if only
It is
tradition-
authentically Jewish. It is authentically Jewish.
If only Jewish tradition worked that way, because if Jewish tradition worked that way, socialism would be authentically Jewish. All the different things that Jews have done throughout the ages would be authentically Jewish. So I'm going to come back to what you're saying. So what's quite interesting, by the way, you didn't see his Bible, but it's all these passages are underlined. So this is clear.
Yep. I've underlined every one, so my eye can find them very
in Bob's
easily.
territory.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're comfortable here. So what I was going to say is, just because somebody does something, it doesn't make it authentically Jewish if a Jew does something. Because Jews did many things. In that period that we're talking, Josephus documents many false messiahs. And they would have done things, but that is the things that they came and said is not authentic. I'll give you a modern example. There is a Chabad rabbi in Ibiza, and in Jewish law, we fast on fast days, but then we believe when the Messiah comes and we enter the Messianic era, the fasts will become feasts. And this rabbi thinks that the Messiah has already come, not Jesus, somebody else. Therefore, in Ibiza, in Tisha B'Av, on certain fasts, he's eating a feast. Now, that is not an authentic Jewish tradition today to eat food on Tisha B'Av when we're mourning the destruction of the temples. So just because a Jew does something, it doesn't make it authentically Jewish.
Great.
So just
One second. I want to build on that.
I want to set what makes something Jewish.
Yeah.
So the reason we follow the scriptures that we follow is the Jewish court at some point ruled that these are canonical. These are the books of the Old Testament. And these books are outside.
When did that Jewish court exist?
So the first court was Moses and the 70 elders, and then that concluded. The final court we had was Rav Ashi and Ravina, and we have a chain of narration.
When is that last court? When is that last court?
So the last court will have been around, I think, 400 CE.
Right. So this is my point. The Judaism that you follow is not a first century Judaism.
No, the Judaism I follow is the Judaism of Moses.
It's not even the Jewish. It's not even the Jewishness of Moses.
It absolutely
because you read first century Jewish literature. Well, let me finish. It was contested amongst one. Let me finish.
You read that same literature?
Yes, I do, and this is why I'm historically right. Is that it was contested amongst Jews. It was contested amongst Jews how to interpret Mosaic law and how to implement Mosaic law. And the Pharisees, which are the group that you have origins to, and the Messianic Christians, which is the group that I have connections to, are the only two groups that survived the destruction of Israel under the Romans in 70 AD, and then I think, what was it, 120 AD?
Maybe the Samaritans as well. I don't know if you'd consider them Jews or not Jews.
Actually, you're right. Your Samaritans will add a third group. Samaritans survived as well. So the thing is, but that your formulative text and your formulative authorities are all older than mine. And therefore, I am talking about an earlier form of Judaism than you. Let me finish.
You're not talking.
Let me finish.
Ezra. Who came
Let
first,
me finish.
Ezra or
Let me
Jesus?
finish. The best interpretation of Ezra is found in the New Testament, not in the Talmud. Let me finish. Let me finish. Right?
Can you give me any of the decrees that Ezra set?
Let me just finish. Right. So my point to you is that you would agree that there are atheist and pagan Jews in Israel, right?
Yes.
Right. Now, those people, I assume you would say, are also undermining the Jewish identity of Israel, correct?
Yes. Yes.
And therefore, logically, would you seek to exclude them in the same way you would seek to exclude?
No, but I said I wouldn't exclude them.
No, that's true. That's true. You did. That's true. But my point to you is that these groups are further away from Judaism. I'm going to change my point then, because I forgot that you did say that. But these groups are further away from Judaism than a Messianic Christian.
I would disagree unless...
An atheist, you're saying that an atheist is closer to Jewish identity than someone who believes in the Old Testament prophets?
Yes, because I would say that if you believe in the Trinity, and I don't want to make this a Trinity because you do this every week with the Muslims.
Yeah.
It's not interesting.
I mean, I can do that with you if you want.
But I would say the Trinity is imposing something which doesn't exist in Jewish tradition, whereas the atheist is just removing something. And I say is to create something additional is
worse,
is further than to remove something. So
okay, let me reply to that.
I think what I would say, I don't want to create category. I'd say they're both problematic.
Let me reply to that.
I just want to be really clear to what I'm saying. I would say they're actually. I'm going to change what I'm saying because I'm thinking on my feet.
Yeah.
I would say that in my mind they're equal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me reply to that, because the Old Testament is replete with the plurality of God's divinity. It's full of it. Like Yahweh on earth calls down fire from Yahweh in heaven. Yahweh sends Yahweh. You know, that there is a plurality within the Old Testament in terms of defined figures, and that was an authentic Jewish interpretation of the Old Testament.
So can you give me
wait,
predates Christianity says that?
So Philo of Alexandria, he was a Jew. He spoke about the wisdom of God and the logos of God as an organizing principle that was both divine, personable, but not just not a one-to-one identification with Yahweh. It wasn't like Yahweh became his own word. It is that his word was also divine. You know about that, right?
No, I don't.
Yeah, you need to read Philo, bro. If you read first century Jewish documents, like, for instance, I think it's the Book of Enoch. I think it's the Book of Enoch, or one of the books of Enoch. I can get the reference for you. I can send it, because me and you are in touch.
Yeah.
I can send you the reference. It clearly talks about the Son of Man being a divine figure. And that's a Jewish document interpreting the prophecy of Daniel and saying that the Son of Man is a divine figure.
We can send me those and we can debate that next week. To bring it back to what we're discussing now, the key thing I'm saying, it doesn't really matter which is further from Judaism. Neither are Jewish. So atheism isn't a Jewish principle, not what I would understand Judaism to be.
Yeah.
And the Trinity isn't.
On what grounds do you say that the Trinity is not Jewish?
Because there is no concept of the Trinity before Christianity in any Jewish text.
There is a concept of the plurality of the divinity.
The Trinity.
Yeah.
Forget, it's the Trinity.
So the Trinity is simply a progression of the revelation that is there in the Old Testament.
You're saying a progression which suggests it comes later?
Yes, it does.
Okay,
it's a progression of the revelation.
So
that's absolutely.
So we're in agreement. It came later, and so I'm saying.
But it came later because of a Jew.
That's fine.
A Jew called Jesus.
I don't want to insult Jews alive today, but there are groups of Judaism, there are groups that have come from Judaism today that I would consider to practice deviations. I don't want to call them heretics, but they're following things that aren't traditional.
Yeah.
And I would agree with your original point, where you said that what Jews practice today has evolved and developed.
There you go.
So I would agree with that. But in all of those instances, it comes back to what I was saying. It's to preserve the original law. And so what we have as a concept, if you go anywhere in the Jewish world, Jews have always kept the Sabbath holy.
Yeah.
The Sabbath is the seventh day, it's the Saturday, not the Sunday.
Yeah.
Christianity came along, it changed it to the Sunday. Whether a Messianic keeps the Sabbath on the Saturday or the Sunday doesn't really matter. For the point of this argument, Judaism says this is the Sabbath, and we have a reason why we.
And Messianic Jews would do that. They would keep the Sabbath on a Saturday.
I understand.
So they're not undermining Jewish identity in any way.
If they're keeping the Sabbath, in that instance, they're not. And I would encourage Messianic Jews to keep the Sabbath because you are commanded to keep the Sabbath.
But hold on one second.
The reason you should do that is because of the law of Moses.
Joseph, I'm talking to you, not the camera.
Sorry.
But my point to you, Joseph.
I'm used to debating the
camera.
camera.
It's fine. But no one's heckling you. But the point is, Joseph, what I'm trying to say to you is that you're trying to argue that Messianic Jews are a threat to the nation of Israel, or to the Jewish identity of Israel. I'm saying to you that actually they embody the Jewish identity of Israel, and all they're doing is claiming a far earlier form of Judaism than yourself.
So let's just to this point.
So let me ask you this question. Let me ask you this question.
Then I'll ask mine.
Do the Jews believe that God enters in? Are there Jews alive who believe that God can and does enter into His creation? Jews, your kind of Jews, like rabbinic Jews. Are there those amongst them that say that God can enter into His creation?
So my understanding of most the theological schools within Judaism, and again, I debate politics, that's my area. I'm very much the layman when it comes to my faith. I keep the law to the best of my ability, but I'm not a rabbi. But to my understanding, the key schools almost like a pantheism, a panentheism, and then the school I belong to, which I believe is the more authentic and the older tradition, which is the infinite. So there's a rabbi called Rabbi Sadia Gaon, and he is a descendant of the rabbis who authored the Mishnah, the Gemara, the Talmud. He is one of the most authoritative rabbis of all time, and he wrote a whole book and on these sorts of concepts, and he says the infinite cannot exist within the finite.
That's not the question.
You said
my question. You missed my question. All you did is you narrowed it to the Jews that you agree with.
No,
I asked you the question. I asked the question. Hold on. I asked the question, and here's the question: are there Jews, people that you would recognise as Jews, your kind of Jews, who agree that God can enter into His creation?
So I said pantheist, so that would be like God is everything and everywhere, and that is the most common belief, is God is existence, God is everything, God sustains everything. that's the most normative position today, I would say. So it's not that God can enter His creation; it's like the creation is. But
There are Jews that are pantheists.
Yes, and I would say that
That's not my question.
Pantheist,
To be clear, that's not my question. My question to you, Joseph, is: are there Jews that believe that, for instance, when it says that Moses saw God's back parts, or that Jacob wrestled God, or that
for us, this is all metaphoric language.
No, hold on.
It's not that.
Are there Jews that believe that God truly had entered into creation at that point?
Not that I'm aware of.
Right, I have you on camera in another debate and another discussion where you said that they were, and I'll get JC the clip. I'll give JC the clip, and
please,
because you're giving a different answer to earlier.
So then I maybe misspoke, or I misremembered something.
Yeah.
I remembered something then.
Yeah, it's all right. It's all right. We're going to do the whole thing where we put one clip next to the other. My point to you is that there are Jewish.
Well, just for real clarity, what did I say?
So I asked you a very similar question, and you said that even though you yourself, I'm not going to quote you ad verbatim, but even though you yourself disagreed with that, there were Jewish rabbis who did believe that God could and did enter into His creation. Because it was me, you, Steve, Paul. We were all. This was during the lockdown. We were in a Zoom conversation, and we were all talking together. Do you remember?
I remember the call. That was that would have been the call when there was the stabbing in the port where we had Jassim.
Yeah, I think it was around about that time, and that's when you said it.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
If I said that, that's relatively recent.
So my point to you is, because here's the point: is that the reason why you think that Messianic Jews are a threat to the Jewish identity of Israel is because you are fixed to a later version of that Judaism. Let me finish. I'll let you finish. Your formulative texts, your formulative authorities are all AD, right? But the Judaism that the Romans tried to destroy was far more diverse than what you're making Judaism today. And the Messianic Jews are claiming that earlier form of Judaism, and thus they're not a threat to Jewish identity. They're actually an earlier form of Jewish identity.
Okay. I'm going to respond to that, but I think my camera just
right. Shall we stop? Shall we bring it to a close?
Yeah, we can stop. I do want
Yeah, you reply to that, and then we'll bring it to an end.
So, the key thing I want to focus on, because I think it's the fundamental part of this conversation, is you're saying they are following an authentic, older version of Judaism than what Jews are following, which is quite chutzpah. So I would ask you to
I have no idea what that just meant. I'm sure you just insulted me.
Oh, no, it's...
I'm joking. It's like ballsy.
Yeah.
I thought so.
Yeah.
It's quite ballsy of you. Yeah. You're right.
And so I was...
Did you not know Ballsy's my middle name? Bob Ballsy.
So my question is very, very simple. Can you point to these traditions that Messianic Jews, not Christians, Messianic Jews in particular, follow? Because when I look at Messianic Jews, I see them appropriating all the symbolism, the rituals that the Pharisees preserved or introduced, and then reappropriate. So, for instance, the clothing they wear, the kippot, the talit, the prayer shawls, everything that they do.
It's all later Jewism.
All later
Rabbinic
Judaism.
Yes, you're right.
And was never introduced by rabbinic Jews for the reasons that they're saying. And so
they're allowed to reinterpret them.
People are free to do anything. I'm saying, but that's not authentic Judaism.
No, it's not authentic rabbinic Judaism.
But it was rabbinic Jews that introduced these things.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so
it's part of their Jewish identity.
Just to really explain.
Wait, one second. Would you agree with me that?
Can I just conclude my point?
Yeah, go on.
So, if rabbinic Jews introduced something in the 3rd century, let's say, and
did they introduce things in the 3rd century?
Yeah, basically from the time of Moses, there were gezerot and takanot, decrees and statutes that were introduced by rabbis.
So we agree it is perfectly legitimate for Jews to introduce new things, new customs.
So there's a mechanism which has existed since the time of Moses, up until Rav Ashi and Ravina, of how decrees are introduced to preserve the law of Moses. The whole purpose of these. So, as an example, Ezra the scribe, Ezra HaSofer, he introduced numerous decrees to protect the law. So, as an example, he introduced a reading of the Torah scroll
Yeah.
on a Saturday afternoon.
Yeah.
And all Jews around the world do this.
Yeah.
And if Messianic Jews do this, they're doing something which Ezra introduced.
Yes.
Yeah. Similarly, there were rabbis that came after, there were courts that came after. But the mechanism for introducing these things is
Yep.
it has to be to protect the law,
Yep.
or to protect the Jewish people.
Yep.
It has to be passed by the Supreme Court, the Sanhedrin, the Beit Din HaGadol. And once it's set as law, it can't be changed. You can't change the meaning. The only way it can be changed is if a greater court comes in a later generation
Yep.
and introduces it.
Would
So,
you agree that the Messiah is greater than the Sanhedrin?
So we have a different concept of Messiah. So
No,
there's
I
a
just
whole
want to answer that question.
No,
Is the Messiah greater than the
So
Sanhedrin?
the Mashiach will have a Sanhedrin. I assume the Mashiach will have a Sanhedrin, but basically,
Will he be a higher authority?
No,
though?
so you don't understand how Jewish law works. Jewish law works. The only mechanism for if there is a prophetic voice comes from the heavens
Yeah.
and says the law is X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
According to Judaism, we can't follow that. That we follow what the court says. So even if a river is to flow the wrong way because the divine
Yeah.
voice
Yeah.
commands it to, we still follow the rulings of the court.
But
If
this
a
is-
rabbi is convinced, as an example, a rabbi knows that Yom Kippur is on Tuesday.
This legal custom that you have, right? Can you show me where is that stated explicitly in the prior to? Yeah. Because while you're looking for that, the point I'm trying to make to you is that the Jewish interpretations, right? So I'm not disagreeing with you that Messianic Jews are appropriating rabbinic forms and reinterpreting them. So that there is synergy between your position and my position. Historically, I think you're right. Rabbinic traditions that you've mentioned, like the hat and the shawl, Messianic Jews are reinterpreting those things.
Yes.
But I am saying that the authority by which they interpret them is the authority of the Messiah. It's based upon the New Testament text. So they're using the New Testament text to reinterpret things that are part of their own history, because they're still genetically part of the Jewish people, and they're taking what is part of their own history as being part of the Jewish people, and they're interpreting those things based upon an even earlier understanding of Judaism, which is a first century Judaism, that Yeshua is the Messiah.
Okay, so we're in agreement in that they are changing from the original reason it was introduced, yes?
I think that, and I'm saying that there's nothing wrong with that.
And that's fine. As a Christian, you can think there's nothing wrong
Yeah.
with that. As a Jew who wants to preserve the law of his father, we believe that you can't just come along and change that law, and you can't.
No, it's
give
not
it
the law
another
they're
meaning.
changing. They're changing the interpretation of the law.
You can't change the fine. You can't change the interpretation.
Okay, basically.
No,
yeah,
well, sorry, we're
I've got
having a
large
conversation.
Penis, yeah,
Sorry.
And I just want to ask, is it
Look, he's obviously got a microphone and he just wants to be silly.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
carry on. Like, relax, bro. Like, I mean, I know you're trying to have your moment in the sun.
I've got 9 inch and I'm struggling to use it at home.
Bro, like, that's
Like, no,
fine.
I need help. This is what I've
That's
got to
fine.
actually speak to school now. I've got
Yeah.
my cameraman here.
Yeah,
as well.
you enjoy that.
No,
you
please,
enjoy that.
please, sir, you need to
You
actually
enjoy
help
that.
me. No, you need to help me.
You just
I've
interrupt.
got-
You're
I've got a large
right now. All you're
9
doing, all you're
inch.
doing.
I don't know how to use it at home. I
All
just
you're
need
doing now
someone-
is just
I
being
just-
rude. You're just being rude.
What religion are you representing?
Yeah, you're just being rude, bro.
Why bring a religion involved?
Because we're having a religious conversation.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering
Well,
what
no,
you're
I'm just.
representing.
I just need help.
I bet your money is a Muslim.
Really, speaking
No.
like that? That's
I
not
bet
the-
you- I
that's
bet
the
you're real
example
money.
of
I bet you're real
Muhammad.
money. I bet you're real
Is that
money.
the example of Muhammad?
I bet your real money is a
So you're
Muslim.
not. You're not. Muslim.
So you deny Muhammad's a prophet?
Why you bring a religion involved?
Well, are you denying that Muhammad's a prophet?
What was that?
Yeah.
So what if I'm a Muslim? So what?
There you go. Yeah, bro, we've got you on our cameras. So what? We've got you on our cameras. We've got you on our cameras. So he's tried to shut his own camera down so he doesn't act like an on his own camera, and we've got him on 3 cameras doing exactly that. So he's just shot himself in the foot entirely.
Chat to me.
Bro, why are you being silly? Why are you being silly?
Watching, you shut your mouth.
Why are you being silly?
Shut your mouth.
Why are you being silly?
Man's out here.
Bro, relax.
Man's recorded.
You
doing my
drink
thing.
too much coffee. Relax.
You shut up, mate.
Make me.
You're not funny.
Make me.
I won't make you.
Yeah, go on.
You shut it.
Look, you're being silly.
You shut
Go
it.
away.
No one told you to talk.
Yeah, try and stop me.
No.
Well, there you go then.
No.
So Joseph, shall we try and continue our code? Yep. So my point to you is, bro, right? My point to you is that, in fact, I forgot my point. What was I saying?
So we were talking about the interpretation of.
Yeah. So Jews over time, we both know, have added customs to the practice of their religion.
To preserve the law.
That is the way that they've done that.
To protect
yes.
the law. We agree with that, yeah?
I agree. Pharisaic Jews have done exactly that for that reason.
To protect the Mosaic law.
I
yes.
totally agree. That is exactly what the Pharisees did. And Jesus in the first century called them out for doing it. He said that you have made the word of God defaulted by your human traditions. That was one of the debates that was happening in the first century, was that there were critics.
Did Jesus keep the law of Moses?
Wait 1 second. Yes, he did. There were critics of the. 1 second. There were critics of the Pharisees in the first century. Jesus was one of them, and he accused them of using man-made traditions to overrule the Mosaic law. That is a it's in the Gospels.
So
I can show you if you want.
Just out of curiosity, which law did they overrule?
I will show it you. I will show you.
No. Which of the laws? Not like a generic statement.
I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you. Just got to find the passage. I've also really need the loo. Really need the loo. You bought me a lovely cup of tea, but I really need the loo
that was
now.
My strategy all along.
Yeah, it's working, bro. It's working.
Closing comments.
I am distracted. Right, hold on. You have made the law to non-effect by your human traditions, Jesus, New Testament. Give it a minute. So in Mark 7:13, hopefully I think it's the right place. It'll also give an example if
it's a shame it's not 6:30 because there's 613 commandments.
That would be good, wouldn't it? That would be good. We can always change the chapters for you, Joseph. Yeah. What was all that about with that knobhead?
Like, no, it's just embarrassing. It's like, what?
Yeah. Like, and notice, right? He came in, and the moment we called him out being a Muslim, he was called out. And this is the point, guys. Unless you stand up to these Islamist punks, this is the kind of behaviour that in microcosm is going to be inflicted upon all of us, and it's going to be far nastier when it's not on camera, you know? So that's the reality. So Mark 7:13, are they coming back?
Yes.
Right, looks like we're going to go for a round 2. The truth is though, like, I really need the loo, so I can't fight. I'm not even sure I could run at this point. Right, so let's...
That's a cafe.
Yeah, but I don't want Joseph to say I'm running away.
No, I would never say you're
I
running
know.
away.
So
that kind of a conversation.
So Mark 7:13. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bear with us 1 second.
And this is, for me, I'm just interested in learning. I don't know a lot about Christianity.
So Mark chapter 7, reading from verse 9. He was also saying to them, "You are experts at setting aside the commandments of God in order to keep your tradition. For Moses said, 'Honor your father and your mother,' and he who speaks evil of father or mother is to be put to death. But you say, if a man says to his father or his mother, 'Whatever I have would help you,' is korban." Do you know what that means? Korban?
Korban's a sacrifice.
Yeah, that is to say given to God. "You no longer permit him to do anything for his father or his mother, thus invalidating the word of God by your tradition, which you have handed down, and you do many things such as that."
So do we have any... So what I would say, in Judaism, we absolutely are supposed to honour the mother and father. And
but if you...
Because I'm trying to understand what you're saying here. So
I can tell you. I can tell you what I'm saying.
Let me just
go on.
For my benefit. So within Judaism, within the Old Testament, the Torah, it says that the rebellious son should be killed.
Yeah.
The Supreme Court throughout the age, there's no record of any son being put to death, because we have a tradition that the court should do everything it can to avoid the capital punishment.
Yeah.
And a court that puts one person to death in 70 years is considered a bloody cause. And this is the Pharisees. And so if you look at America, Americans will kill many people each year, whereas the Jewish courts, for thousands of years, for 1,500 years, if they put one person to death in 70 years, it was considered excessive. So there's no history of us ever killing the rebellious son. What it sounds like you're saying is that Jesus was saying that we should put the rebellious son to death.
So what Jesus was saying is that the thing is, the classical style of Jesus' teaching is to use hyperbole. He uses hyperbole all the way through. He uses hyperbole a lot, and I suspect this is another hyperbole statement. Though I am in favour of the death penalty.
For the rebellious son?
Well, let me finish. So I believe.
I hope
So
you
let me
haven't had
finish.
any children.
Let me finish. Let me
Yeah,
finish.
you did shut that
Let me
one, shall I?
finish.
Please, God,
Let me
sorry.
finish. Let me finish. So the commandment is that you should honour your mother and father, and that means you
Yes.
uphold them in their old age. You lift them up,
Yeah, well,
right? Right. But
not even-
let me
according to
finish.
the Jewish law, you're
Let
not
me
even allowed
finish.
to say the name
Let
of
me
your father
finish.
out of
Let me
respect.
finish. Let me finish.
No, I'm agreeing with you.
Right.
I'm building on what you're saying.
But the Jews said that if a Jew turned around and said that their money was korban, i.e. it was offered to the temple, it was offered to
Yes.
God as a sacrifice, that money couldn't be used to uphold their mother and father. And that's what Jesus is talking about.
Okay, that's-
So my point is, the Pharisees had their critics in the first century. Our Lord Jesus Christ was a critic of the Pharisees, and he was a critic of their way of
Just the
interpreting
point
the
of
law.
principle,
So my point is, when you're talking about the principle is we add to our customs and traditions to put a fence around the law, you're repeating the very criticism that Jesus criticizes, and that means one second, I'm landing.
Okay.
Joseph,
Land,
calm down.
land.
I'm landing. So
I
that
can welcome
means
you in.
that we have a first century evidence of Jews criticizing exactly the idea that you are laying out to defend your whole position, which is that the only way we can add to the law is to put a fence around the law, and Jesus is criticizing that very principle.
Okay, so this is a question, just from a Christian perspective.
Yeah.
If you designate something as for God,
Yes.
you put it aside and you say, this money here is my. So in Judaism, we have to give to the widow, the orphan.
Yeah.
We
Same
have
here.
To give to
We
the
have to do that.
Levium, We have to give to the temple when the temple stood.
Yeah.
So that
we
all of the
give to the
services-
temple, which is the body of Christ. Yeah.
So my question is, if you designate something as being for the temple,
Yeah.
as a Christian, can you then take that back and give it to someone else?
If love demands it, yes. So for
interesting.
instance,
So in Judaism we
so
can't,
if
that's
I
interesting.
if I said, so for instance, like the kind of default setting of Christians is that we give 10% of our money to the church. But if our 10% is needed somewhere else, we can direct it somewhere else, particularly if love demands it. Let me finish. So for instance,
I just need to. Is that before or after you've designated it?
after.
That's
So for
interesting.
instance, I'm speaking about me, right?
Yeah, my understanding from the Jewish perspective, and again, I'm not a rabbi, so I will.
I've just quoted you a Jewish perspective.
So,
That is a Jewish perspective.
So,
It's Jesus' perspective. He was a Jew.
from the normative Jewish perspective
The,
today.
the latter Jewish, but latter day Jewish
no, we're talking
perspective.
to people that are existing at the same time.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Right. Go on.
So once you designate something as being for something, so even today, if I mentally say I'm going to give this £300 to an orphanage in India, then I have to give that £300 because I've mentally said this is no longer mine. This is to help somebody else.
Yeah.
And you're saying Christianity has a slightly different take, or Jesus has a slightly different take, which is that you can always overrule what you've designated. In Judaism, we have explicit tithes that we have to take
Yeah.
from everything.
Yeah.
We have, so for instance, even if we have a field of produce,
Yeah.
we're not, we have to let it rest for on the 7th year,
Yeah.
and the poor can come
Yeah,
and take
yeah,
from
yeah,
it.
yeah.
And I, as a person, can't suddenly come and take that food for myself and say, no, you poor people can't have it. They were explicit. I have to leave a corner of the food, the payot.
Yeah, I know about it. Yeah.
And so, once something has been designated for the good of someone else, it is no longer your possession.
Yep.
You no longer have the right. And so you're saying within let's just call it Jesus's reading of or understanding of Jewish law, that designation doesn't count.
So
The possession is 9/10 of the law.
no, what he's saying is what he's saying is, so Jesus's interpretive key to the Mosaic law was to love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself.
Nothing wrong with any of that.
And then he goes on to tell, the parable of the Samaritan. Now, you know the story of the Samaritan, I assume. Do you know the parable of the Samaritan?
Yes.
So you've got a priest of the temple. He comes and then he doesn't offer aid. And then you've got a scribe of the temple, a scribe of the Torah comes. I think it's a scribe comes, or maybe it's a Pharisee comes and he doesn't offer aid. And why don't they offer aid? Because they're scared of being ritually unclean. Right?
Or scared in those times that there's conflict. They're
Yeah,
going to be robbed.
yeah.
There's many
So
reasons why.
right. So then the Samaritan comes along. Samaritans are meant to be the enemies of the Jews. The two groups don't like one another, and the Samaritan offers aid. What Jesus is saying is that where your rituals or where your fences get in the way of doing the most loving thing, then it's okay to cross over that fence.
But then it just becomes completely subjective. Within Judaism, we don't have that subjectivity. There is a tradition, and tradition is everything. And if you designate something for the temple, if you designate something to God, it is no longer yours. If you designate something for the orphan, it is no longer yours.
Is it in the Old Testament to make something korban?
Yeah. I mean, it's all over the Old Testament.
Right.
Yeah.
So I suspect then, because I believe that Christ kept the Old Testament law.
Yes.
So if Christ is criticizing this, he's criticizing the bit that how you interpret. You know, like you talked about putting a fence around the Torah.
Yes.
He's criticizing that aspect of that. Because he would say that that's a man-made tradition. It's not in the Torah.
I mean, he doesn't say that.
He does say that.
He does say that. Gezerot and Takanot are not from the Torah.
No. I don't think he says that. We'll just read the passage again. So he was also saying to them, you are experts at setting aside the commandments of God in order to keep your tradition. For Moses said, honor your father and your mother, and he who speaks evil of father or mother is to be put to death. But you say, if a man says to his father or his mother, whatever I have that would help you is korban. You no longer permit him to do anything for his father or his mother. So in other words,
if he read that just so I can, because I'm listening to your interpretation, but I just like to see it for myself.
I was literally just reading.
Yeah, no, just because I'm a slow thinker. Yeah.
Do you have a New Testament?
No.
I'd like to give you one.
I know you would.
I'm going to give you one. Because you should read these things for yourself, bro. Because the thing is, if you're going to deny your mother and father the thing that they need, because you've said, I've dedicated it to the temple, then you can't.
That, though?
Yeah, because he's saying, look, he says it here, right? If a man says to his father or his mother, whatever I have, that would help you, so they need help. That would help you is korban.
Yeah,
that is to say, given to God. You, as in the Pharisees, the experts of the law, no longer permit him to do anything for his father or his mother with that which is made korban. So how can it be to uphold your mother and father if you say to them, I can't give you what you need because I've given it to the temple? How can you honor your mother and father if you do that?
So, again, that's not how Jewish law would work. If you
that is how Jewish.
No. Jewish law works that if you can't afford, to give to the mikdash.
So clearly, this is someone who can afford.
So if it's someone who can afford, then they can afford to sustain their parent.
But if they say to themselves, "What I could give to you that would help you is now korban; it's given to God," then if they do that, right? I'm going to ask you, just as a Pharisaic Jew, right? Yes. If someone was to do that and to say, right, what I was going to give to you, what I could give to you, mother and father, to help you in your time of need, I've now dedicated to the temple. According to your understanding of the law, are they allowed to redirect that money back to their mother and father in their hour of need?
My understanding, and again,
let's just say he dedicates 100% to the temple.
You can't.
Right. I'm asking the thought experiment, right? So he's got money that he could have given to his parents in a time of need.
So it's not. So how it works is you designate. There are set amounts that you designate. You can designate more, but you couldn't do that to the detriment of other people that are dependent on you. And so this is
clearly people were doing that. Well, clearly people were doing that in the first century. Maybe the Jews have got that sorted out now, but that's not what was happening in the first century, because that's why Jesus is criticizing it.
So,
you probably agree with Jesus' criticism of those people.
So I would agree that you should be supporting your parents as well as, from a Jewish perspective, you should be doing both. You should be supporting the temple, and you should. But
let's say you miscalculate. You miscalculate, and you, in your mind and in a pledge, you give money that you actually now need to support your parents, but you've pledged to give it to God.
To give it the same way. If I have, let's say I have a certain amount every month, which I do, which I give to charity, and I donate X hundred 100,000, whatever it is, to a charity.
Yep.
I can't then ring them up and say, I'm really sorry, I gave you too much. Can I have some money back?
Yep.
Like in today's world, once I've hit send on the bank transfer, it's gone. It's the same. Once I designate
Yeah, but that's
that
having,
money,
but we're talking about designation, not actually given.
But that's, I mean,
Because you said when you've committed it in your mind, so that means you hadn't wrote the check yet.
yeah, but for us, there's no difference. That's what I'm saying.
Right. So my
Yeah.
question to you is: say you foolishly over designate money, and then your parent calls you up out of the blue and goes, "Hey, I'm really desperate. Can you give me? Can you lend me? Can you give me 500 quid?" But you don't have it because you've just designated in your mind. You haven't wrote the check yet. In your mind, you've designated that to help a Jewish charity helping Jewish orphans.
My truthful answer is I'd need to look up the law now.
Right.
I'm not sure what the halakha would be.
Yeah.
on that.
Well, I'd love to hear what your answer to that is, but Jesus is saying.
So I just give it. My answer would be I would need to look up
Right.
what the law is.
And this is my point: is that Jesus is saying, if you come back to me next week and go, well, I've looked at the halakha, and the halakha does say that now I've made that commitment, I have to follow through on it, then Jesus is criticising that.
And that's fine.
And
People
he-
are free.
because
That is the.
Because that's your man-made customs and traditions. So coming back to
Sorry. Giving to the temple is not a man-made custom.
No.
Do we agree with that?
no, giving to the temple is not a man-made custom.
Okay, thank you.
But saying to yourself that because I've committed to give it to the temple,
So before we get there, so we've both established we're in agreement that financially supporting.
I
the
mean, we've
temple.
gone way off the original
I know.
topic now.
But
Way off the original
we can bring
topic.
it back there. But we're both in agreement.
Let's
that
move back
giving-
to the original. Let's bring it back to the.
Well, we'll do that. But just we're both in agreement that giving to the temple
Is scriptural.
Scriptural.
Yes.
And what we're in disagreement with is when it becomes binding.
Yes.
Yeah. And for me, I would have to consult the books because I don't know. off the top
No,
of my
you
head.
said you would consult what book?
So I would consult the Talmud and I'd read it via Maimonides.
Right, and when and the Talmud is what century?
So the Talmud is from the period we're talking all the way up to
right,
like 400.
and you also said you'd consult the Haggadah. Haggadah?
No, the Haggadah is something
Haggadah.
else.
Okay.
That's for
right.
the Seder.
So you'd consult that, and that's my point.
So I'd consult. I'd read Maimonides' understanding of the Talmud.
And the Talmud is the book that you've written with your own hands, as far as I'm concerned, right?
We wrote all the books with our own hands,
exactly.
so-
It's I'm just putting something in there for the Muslims that might watch this. Like, so the Talmud is a man-made book, and it's full of man-made traditions. Jesus is criticising that. Now, coming back, bringing this all back to the topic. My point to you is, if Messianic Christians are rooting themselves in an older Judaism,
But it's
they
not
are
an older
not
Judaism.
No, you're only defining it as not being
Ezra
you're
predates.
not you're only defining it as not being authentically Jewish because you're following a later
No,
Judaism.
for
Your
instance,
formulations are all
As
later.
an example, the Anshe Knesset Agadolah, the men of the Great Assembly.
Yeah.
Ezra had 120 of them.
Yeah.
That's all in the Talmud. This is what preserves that we're talking.
I'm not obviously going to argue with the Talmud, am I? No, sorry, I'm not obviously Talmud. I am going to argue with the Talmud. I'm obviously not going to argue with the Torah. I'm obviously not going to
He's
argue.
going
with
to take the Jewish Shahada.
Yeah, right.
Shema Yisrael.
No. I have a joke, but it's really rude, so I'm not. So it's about circumcision, but I'm not going to make it. Go on.
Kind of lost my chain of thought with all that.
Let's just say I need a sock. Sorry, so that's taking it too low. Go on.
So I kind of lost my chain of thought there.
Right, shall we stop there, Joseph?
Okay, but what just a concluding thought.
Like,
bring back to
the
the
final
message.
summary point
So, I, as an Orthodox Jew,
about Messianic Jews in Israel.
have no issue with any Jews, irrespective of their faith, coming to Israel. I would say the best place for a Messianic Jew is to come to Israel because they will be surrounded by Jews with far more knowledge than me that can help them return back to the traditions of their ancestors, not the traditions that were originated in America a couple of decades ago. They can discover the laws that their ancestors tried to upkeep under the threat of death, under the threat of persecution. And it's tragic that so many American Jews have abandoned those traditions that their ancestors risked everything to upkeep and to uphold. It's tragic that they've abandoned these for traditions that have been invented less than 50 years ago. It's a real tragedy, but the best place for these Jews is with their family.
JC, we're finishing soon.
We want you to come home. We want you to return to the ways of your forefathers, and we want you to worship Hashem.
He's trying to do evangelism. Okay. so my final comment, and then we're going to stop. So my final comment is that in Israel, the question of the status of Messianic Jews is a controversial topic, and it shouldn't be. Messianic Jews are authentically Jewish in every sense. They're Jewish by blood, their mothers are Jewish. And they are Jewish by religion because the religion that they follow is rooted in Jewish documents and a Jewish movement that you can find in the New Testament. The New Testament is not a Christian book. The New Testament is a Jewish book or Jewish books. And Israel should have no problem with allowing Messianic Jews to come to Israel to practice their religion, and shouldn't see it as diluting their Jewish identity, because in every sense they are authentically Jewish. They can claim and reinterpret Jewish customs because they are ethnically Jewish, and they can reinterpret it based on a first century Jewish document called the New Testament. And I would invite all Jews, including Joseph, to actually pick up that New Testament and read it for yourself, because you're actually connecting with something Jewish, something that Jews wrote for Jews to Jews. And what could be more Jewish than claiming something that the Romans tried to destroy when they tried to destroy Israel in the first century?
So there's nothing.
Oh, wait, that was our final comment. We're doing another round.
No, I was just going to say.
He's got another final one.
It's very interesting to hear a Christian telling a Jew what isn't Jewish. It's quite.
It is
interesting.
totally Jewish.
And the New Testament.
It's totally Jewish. Have you ever read it?
Yes.
You have read it?
Yes, I have read it.
Have you got one?
No.
Right, I'm going to give you one as a gift.
I'd
like to give it to you.
I know you would, but I'd rather.
Oh,
I'd like you, Bob.
Don't be upset. Oh, wait. Well, while we're here, right, me and Joseph would like to put out an invitation to Dr. David Brown and Rabbi Tovia Singer to come and have a debate, which we will host, and to keep it all civil. And yeah, would you like to say anything about that?
Yeah, I'll reach out to a few rabbis. Tovia Singer is one amongst many who may be willing or up for that. I'm definitely not qualified for these debates because I'm not well versed in Christianity. I'm not particularly well versed in my own faith, but please God, my knowledge will grow. But what I was going to say, it's not a concluding thought, but
a conclusion on your conclusion.
A conclusion on my conclusion would be.
You know I'm going to have a conclusion on my conclusion then, right?
So do you always have to have the last word?
No. Go on.
Yeah,
we'll finish. We're done. We're done. Right. Thank you very much.
You can have the concluding word.
No, that's it. We're done. All right. Joseph, that was a pleasure.
As always.
That was always a pleasure. Here's my gift to you, please. It's a Jewish document.
I know, but
have a read of it. It's Jewish.
I've read it, and I can read it online.
Well, this is my gift to you to have in your home and to read.
Every time a Muslim gives me the Quran, I'm very
Is it because it's not kosher to have it in your house?
It's because.
Is it not kosher to have a New Testament?
The New Testament isn't kosher. Yes, the New Testament.
So it's not kosher to have a Jewish document in your house.
I mean, you can have it if it's for reference purposes, and you're wanting.
I'd like to give it you for reference purposes.
But I got it on the internet. I don't need that.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
You.
God bless you, Joseph. No, I'm not offended. All right then.